AI, modern work, security.
We'll unravel it for you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Technically Unraveled. And I'm David Powell, Vice President of Sales Strategy here at Pax8. So thanks for tuning in today. As always, be sure, just like the influencers to tell you, to like, subscribe, and share our awesome content that we've got going on here. And by the way, we have so much other content that comes across our Pax8 channels. We've got the game, which, we're talking about cybersecurity on this show, but we're talking about it from more of like a business perspective. If you want the nerdy perspective, that'll be more on the game with our good friends Matt and Dom over there and their guests. And then we also have all this awesome content from Academy that comes out across our Pax8 channels. So make sure that you catch all this stuff. It's really great content that we're putting out there for our friends and our partners. On this show, we cover AI, modern work, and cybersecurity. And this week, we're joined by one of my 20-year plus friend, Derek Meek, who is a partner at Burr Forman. And we're going to talk about this rapidly evolving landscape of AI, regulation, and how AI is being used in the legal industry. So we'd love to welcome, Derek Meek to the show. But first, here's a little quick agenda. We're going to talk about fear of new technologies and how people get a little nervy when there's new stuff that comes out. We're going to talk about the history and how it comes up. Then we're going to talk about how AI is reshaping this legal landscape. And, do you want an AI lawyer, or would you rather have a human doing this stuff? And then we're going to talk about, the whole deal around AI regulations and how that's impacting the marketplace. So this is what we've got going on today. And now joining us is our good friend, Derek Meek. Derek, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So at Pax8, we kind of do this thing with a fun fact. And I would think that what I know about you is that you would probably have 50 million fun facts to pull from. But what is a fun fact about Derek Meek you want to share today?
You think higher of me than I do, for sure. I appreciate that. My fun fact is probably kind of a boring one. I love to travel. So many people do. That's lame, probably. But so I did count. I anticipated you might ask about a fun fact. I've been to all 50 states. And I've been to 36 countries, but it's kind of weird. I have to, I'm a lawyer. So how you define what is a country is, I have my own set of rules for that, but it's 36. By the end of the year, I think I'll be at 38. And I've got 5 continents. I'm working on all 7, of course.
That's cool. What are the 2 countries we're going to check before the end of the year, Derek?
I'm hopeful to get to Chile and Brazil.
Ah, very good. So checking off some of the South America countries that we got there.
But I'd love your input. So if you go to Prague before before Czechoslovakia split into the Czech Republic and Slovakia, and then you go to Prague after, is that 1 country or is that 2?
That's a great question. Have you seen those crazy people on social media that they can tell you a range of years based on the map by what countries are present
really?
On the map? Have you seen the? Oh,
I have not, but that's wicked.
They're next
Wicked
level,
smart.
right? You can show them this map
level.
and they say, well, that map has to be between these years based on the countries that are present.
So my
awesome.
rule is if it's a government controlling it and then a different government controlling it, then that's 2 different countries. And so Puerto Rico has its own government. So I view, even though it's a territory, I view that as a country because they have their own government. That's my test.
I like this. I like to know that on the Derek Meek countries visited list, there's an FAQ document somewhere that lists what the rules for classifying something as a country.
It's statutory. It's a statutory scheme. Is that what we're going to talk about on this podcast? Is that it? Because I'm ready.
Stunned that you're a lawyer, Derek. I can't believe you didn't go into some other field. This is tremendous.
Yeah.
So one of the things we want to talk about today is this idea of kind of the history of technology. And throughout history, every time some new technologies come out, people freak out, right? There's just this constant freak out. And so we've had this move of repurposing workers from low value tasks to high value tasks and stuff. But one of my favorite charts is this idea that people were legit afraid a long time ago of getting in elevators that didn't have operators in it. So who would have thought that at some point, this would have been intimidating to people? And there's actually articles you can find where people were scared to get on there. And this next slide we have here shows nearly 100,000 people in the 1950s worked as an elevator operator. Where do you see an elevator operator now? Just some kind of bougie hotel, and they do it as kind of some throwback thing, right? I don't think have you ever been in one with an operator?
I don't think so. Never. And I don't feel like there's a corresponding that has a graph of like elevator injuries that spiked as people operated their own
Yeah,
elevator.
no, there's there's not. By the way, I'm 51 and I learned something the other day, and this is a free tidbit for our listeners and for you, Derek, is that when the elevator stops at your floor, if it's going down, it dings twice. If it's going up, it dings once. I never knew that, and now I can't unhear that when I'm going to a place with an elevator. So just log
Value add
log that
to
away.
this podcast. Wow,
Value
impressive.
add. Just don't get
Um,
this kind of content just anywhere, Derek.
right, that's right.
So
That's why we tune in. That's why we tune in.
that's right. So after elevator operators, you had this other panic, where you used to go to the bank teller. And so the bank teller was kind of the old school thing. And then, all of a sudden ATMs came out and everybody's like, well, what in the world are we going to do with all the people who used to make change and all that kind of stuff? So, I mean, what is your kind of take in general when something new comes at you? I remember being with you the very first time that we were in a friend of ours, like self-driving car. Do you typically revolt? I know that your risk tolerance is a little different than mine. Do you typically revolt at new things, or do you typically want to embrace them?
No, and I do. That's funny. That was one of the things I thought about as we were talking. That's great. I remember that, and that was amazing. And I am a car person. I know you kind of are too, David. And so I thought there will never be a time that I don't want to be in control because I like the experience of driving. I want to be in charge and part of that. But then that vehicle's self-driving technology was so amazing. It was maybe 30 seconds, and my daily driver does this now. You push the button and it just goes, and in 30 seconds I was very, very comfortable with that. And in the legal space, I'll add, and I wasn't around for this, it may look like I was, but when the dictaphones came out, I believe the secretaries, I've always heard, anecdotally, that the secretaries or legal project assistant or whatever the title is, they, were worried about that. Is this going to replace me, the dictaphone? And that's a great analogy to technology. No, of course it didn't replace them, but it did make them more efficient. It made my job more efficient as a lawyer. So I think I'm pretty good at embracing that, but I recognize that some people are not.
Yeah, I've been in a Waymo and it drives really great, which is, if you don't know, is a driverless Uber. So it was this, I got matched. So you've been matched with a driverless Uber, and I get in, and it's a Jaguar, and there's no driver, and all this kind of stuff, and it really drove pretty well. I think the way I think about it, Derek, is I want to go around town and like be in charge of selecting who has to have a self-driving car because it's much better than probably those people who drive. You have
Yeah,
been selected to have a self-driving car.
excuse me, sir. Could we talk about this? I think you need
That's
a
right.
car. Right.
We think you'd be a great candidate for that. But the thing though is you get a lot of these people telling you new technology, AI is scary, it's dangerous, it's scary. And I have a good analogy I feel like on that is back in the day during Prohibition, right? Is there were people who were opposed to alcohol on moral grounds during Prohibition, but then you had a bunch of other people who were the bootleggers, Al Capone and folks like that. There's Al Capone, who was arrested for what? Do you remember?
Tax evasion, right?
Correct.
Tax
Tax evasion.
something. Yeah, right.
Yeah, tax evasion. So by the untouchables. But so you've got Al Capone and the bootleggers who are like, no, 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 alcohol is dangerous. We don't want to legalize it because they were making a lot of money doing it. And so what you see right now happening is the people that are telling you AI is the scariest are the ones that are doing it. And I think that they kind of want regulatory capture, which is this idea around like, hey, this is so dangerous that only we should be allowed to do it and no one else should be in this space. So they're the ones saying it's the most dangerous and appealing, for regulation. And that regulation request is going upstream. And now you hear things like from the government saying like, hey, we need to regulate this technology and all that. And you hear that from the White House, where they're coming out and saying that, this is a new thing that they need to move along pretty quick on and respond pretty quickly to. And we have a slide that kind of shows a quote from the White House on that, to where they're talking about that idea about the pace that they need to move with. And they say, we can't move in a normal government pace. We have to move as fast, if not faster, than the technology itself. Now, given how fast AI is changing, Derek, what are the odds, in your opinion, that government can keep up with that?
I have some questions about what is a normal government pace. But
Snail
yeah, I think
on.
right. I do think regulation is a big part of this, and what how that plays a role in the development of AI is interesting. I did see in anticipation of this conversation just recently that there was a survey in the legal industry on how much regulation should be there in the context, I guess, of the legal industry and AI. And there was a split right down the middle about who wanted it, who didn't want regulation. It was interesting though, as I read further into this article about the survey, the larger law firms were very in favor of AI usage, probably unregulated AI usage. They were already using AI. I think really every one of them over a certain threshold. Of course, the smaller firms are probably more concerned about that. There's a cost, issue to that. And I think just recently you saw there was a large regulatory bill in California, and Governor Newsom rejected that law. I agree. I'm not sure what the government pace is exactly, but I do think there's a lot of split in opinion and authority and how that's going to work. Who knows? But at the speed of
Yeah.
government, we'll find out. I don't know, what, 30 years? We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a little public works project here between my house and your house, and there's been a lot of cones set up, but not a lot of work has been done. So
Well, then,
I'm, the pace of government always like, it
eh,
seems a little iffy. And then I tend to end up on like less regulation is good. I feel like with a new technology, it needs to be able to, as they said in the famous More Cowbell skit, to explore the studio space, if you will, right? Is that you need to let the technology kind of breathe and see what it's capable of doing, and usually regulation results in higher cost. So I have this fun little chart I always like to show that shows price changes between different industries. And if you look, what you'll see is like where government regulates these things, pricing goes through the roof, and where it is market based, pricing goes way down. I mean, look at the bottom one down there, 92% decrease in TVs. I mean, what was like the first nice TV you bought? How much did it weigh and how much did it cost?
so the first nice TV I bought, I think it was 2000 and early 2000s. It was a 55-inch TV. This is a great. I'm so glad you asked this. 55-inch TV. It was $2,900, and I remember thinking, this thing is amazing. This is as good as it gets. I watched an Auburn game. I know you'll appreciate that as an Alabama fan. What,
Probably an
let's not
Auburn
talk about.
loss, but
Let's not talk about football. Seriously. So you want to talk about Vanderbilt? So
yeah,
it was a great TV, and I just bought another 55-inch TV, $220. $220. It's crazy. I mean, what a delta.
that is crazy. Oh, that is crazy. I remember when I bought my first like legit TV, and it was a 42-inch Sony Bravia, and that thing probably weighed like 400 pounds.
Oh,
And me and a
yeah.
friend had to like lift it up to get it like in the armoire and stuff. And now I have a 75-inch TV in there hanging, and I could, if my arms are long enough, I could hold that thing by myself, and it cost a fraction of what that original TV cost.
But your point on regulation and increased costs is a good one. I always think about the aviation industry. I come from a aviation family. My father worked for a major legacy airline for over 40 years. In the late 70s, I think it was 70. I think it was the Carter administration that did it, but we were both babies then. But that's when he deregulated the aviation industry, or the government deregulated it. And since then, you've seen the price of aviation and plane tickets just really plummet, and you have startups that come and go, but you didn't see safety really decrease. I bet safety's increased since then.
Yeah,
So it's interesting. I'm a free market guy. I know you are too. So I think there's a real correlation between the government and regulation and price.
yeah, I do. And I think too that usually when there's a lot of regulation, it hinders innovation. And I think, the kind of analogy that I use lots of times is like when the iPhone came out, Apple made a bunch of money selling iPhones, but the people who really got rich were the people who created the apps that run on top, WhatsApp and Instagram and all those types of things. I like to view, AI as like this foundational thing, and the use cases, the applications of the AI that'll sit on top of it will be like where the real money is made and the real, value is driven. I think you and I were having a random conversation a few months ago, and you were talking about, AI and the law. And I think you were telling me there was some vendor y'all looked at just a few weeks later that had already figured out a way to try to like pull AI information, using AI pull information from the law firm around like billing and stuff like that, that you guys are like
Oh,
saying like,
it's
holy cow,
amazing.
that moves fast. I mean,
There's
moves
so
super fast.
yeah, it's not at the speed of government. I'll tell you that. It's moving quickly.
it
Yeah.
is 100% not at the feet of government, except where the IRS is concerned. They seem to want their
Right.
money like
Funny.
really. That group moves really fast. Who knew how that works? So when you kind of think about this in like the legal space, Derek, like if I hire a lawyer, I'm hiring a certain amount of expertise, and I'm hiring, you have a practice area that you focus on, and if I was in that state, there's a lot of expertise that comes with that. How does AI play into that, and how are law firms thinking about this, and what is like the bar association saying around
So, well, first, on the first part of that question, I think law firms are all learning more and more about it. I think the larger firms are leading the charge on that. Obviously, it plays into lower costs and greater efficiency. You're going to work faster. Our industry is a competitive industry. So I think, I'm competing not only against law firms for other law firms for my clients, to have them hire me, but I'm also competing with the law firms in a litigation context, or even in a corporate context, really. There's a law firm on the other side, right, that representing the adverse party, whoever that is. So it's a competitive industry, and it always will be, just by design. So any advantage is material. But the the American Bar Association, just came out with, this is dated July. Oh, get the graphic up. With some really advisory thoughts, I guess, on AI, generative AI, large language models. And I always think about LLM. That's kind of a loaded term in the legal industry, right? It's a different LLM on this one
that?
context.
Yeah, that's right.
But they came out with this report, and I would really recommend your viewer just to Google ABA formal opinion on AI, because it's really interesting, and it tackles several areas of how the lawyers have a code of ethics, regulatory issues. We are regulated really by our state bar associations, but there are things that relate to the ethics of the practice of law and some rules governing it that AI, really will disrupt a little bit, and you have to figure out how they're going to work together. And the ABA tried to get ahead of that with this. Whether they're ahead or behind remains to be seen. But they cover a variety of things like competence. So how does a lawyer competently use AI is important. Confidentiality, that's one that really, it's the first thing that jumps out to me if I'm going to use any kind of generative AI in my practice is, the attorney-client privilege. You're aware of that, and confidentiality. And there's
Yeah.
certain things you can tell your lawyer that they can't say anything about. So if I go in and I'm representing you, David, and I type into whatever chat GPT or whatever the platform is, things about you, have I just destroyed the attorney-client privilege? And so confidentiality is a big part of AI and how that's going to be preserved as you use AI. Another thing this ABA report talks about is fees. So, a lot of us charge by the hour. There are a lot of flat rate things. We're all very sensitive to
Yeah.
fees, David, but our clients are too. So if I go out and use AI and it saves me time, obviously I can't still bill the client for the time that it should have taken, but I saved, right? So when there's a savings, you have
Yeah.
to pass that on to the client. So there's all sorts of issues related to this report and to the practice of law that really AI is, you have to understand how to use it and how it's going to work going forward. It'll be interesting.
Well, I think it's funny too. It's like associates is almost like being a pledge in a fraternity where you have to do all this kind of grunt work that's not particularly fun and all this kind of stuff, but you do learn a ton that benefits you later. What does this potentially do to an associate to where it kind of takes the grunt work maybe out of the mix? If AI is doing the grunt work, is there a component of that that just needs to be done just to prepare you to be kind of a partner later?
Yeah. That's what I obviously AI is great for avoiding repetitive tasks that someone is overqualified for. So there's all sorts of things you do that you're probably overqualified for. And if you can, you'll push that down to someone maybe less experienced. But even there's some things that they're overqualified for. And so eventually that's where AI is going to, I think, help make those people more efficient. The question is, will it replace them? I'm not sure, but it will replace, like to your point, sort of these repetitive jobs that, I remember at the beginning of my career, boxes of documents, going through them by hand, each one of them. And or maybe more repetitive things like a little letter that I needed to write for a partner to sign that I'm going to write as a baby lawyer. And those tasks did lay a groundwork for me to be a lawyer going forward and to do more advanced things. So it certainly provides stepping stones. Will AI take those away from lawyers, younger lawyers, and hinder their progress? I don't know. But I certainly can make the case that it might. I think it will be something that it'll be curious to see how the trajectory of lawyers' development changes as AI becomes more prevalent in the workplace.
Yeah.
I think.
Did y'all have a similar like deal when e-discovery came out? Because what you said is like you were in the era where, opposing counsel will drop all these huge boxes of documents that you had to sift through. And since then to now, you've moved much more towards online,
Sure.
discovery. Is there a certain number of you that like, well, y'all didn't have to go through the boxes like we did? And
Oh,
is AI different, or is that kind of part of that natural maturation?
first, if you don't think I'm cashing that check to people all the time, talking about back in the day, uphill, uphill in the snow both ways, you're
Both
crazy. Of course I do.
ways.
Yeah, both ways. Oh yeah, it's very different. I mean, again, when we look at documents and we have other lawyers going through boxes, reams of documents, they're doing it through a software platform where they click a button, highlight, a hot doc that they think someone needs to look at, or this is not important. It's incredibly more efficient. Um, yeah, without a doubt. And I'm sure that relates to AI as it goes forward. I'll tell you what I use it for. I don't use AI a lot in my practice for the substantive work, really. But I do use it for things like, I'll give you a good example. There is an organization I'm a part of. And when someone else joins that organization, I might write a letter to them congratulating them. And I think I'm a good writer, and I'll spend some time really making that letter personal and investing in it and trying to make it sound like when the person reads it, they'll think favorably of me, I guess. AI crushes that. If I put in what the organization is and what I want to highlight and congratulations, and this is a great honor, and here's why, and what we do is important, or what have you, it's a great, I mean, I don't just spit it out and sign it. I'm going to tweak that, but it is a great starting point. And no one else really can do
Yeah.
that for me. I wouldn't give that to an associate, right? So that's perfect. So
Now, do you
yes, the answer to
think
your question is going to make things a lot more efficient.
you've got obviously contacts and law firms all around the country? Do you think most firms are like saying, hey, you two people go figure out this AI thing? Or are people doing it kind of unilaterally on their own and solving this problem? Or is it more structured? Or how are firms kind of just addressing this? Because I think the concern, not in a bad way, but that people are going to figure this out independently. And then I think the risk then is like, oh no, you said it's competitive space. What if somebody else has figured it out better, than you, or something like that? So how are firms, in your opinion, kind of handling that? Is it individual initiative, or is it a more structured approach?
I suspect, David, that's all over the map. I bet, and I think the larger firms, to my point earlier, I think they're much more organized with a much more strategic approach to AI. So I think that is probably how they're handling it. But other firms, I'm sure, and single shingle kind of lawyers, that's obviously a different landscape for them.
Yeah. One thing that I've always found funny working in this industry a long time is that individuals embrace new technology quickly, institutions embrace new things slowly, right? And so every
That's interesting.
lawyer probably had iPhones before the firm had decided what they were going to do. But in most large law firms, if you want to move a chair in the lobby from one wall to the other wall, you have to convene the executive committee to get together to vote on the movement of the chair. And so I do think there's that sense to where there's probably what's going to end up is there's going to be some like AI guru in most of these firms that has really personally figured a bunch of stuff out that then you try to operationalize the rest of the way.
That is insightful. I think you're right. I think there are early adopters, and I can think of the one lawyer in my firm who had the first iPhone, and shockingly, he is on the front edge of the AI conversation. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's prescient. I agree.
Yeah. So what I would say, I think that in general for me, and when I talk to people, is that um, that was it last week? I think it was where the longshoremen were on strike. And they wanted to fight automation in the ports, and they said we don't want any automation. And I'm like, man, that train has left the station. And so if you stand in front of the train, you'll get run over by it. Or you could attempt to lay tracks and guide it in a direction that you want it to go. So I think in general, it sounds like from the legal profession, there's lots of tricky things with attorney-client privilege and how do we bill for things and all that kind of stuff. But by and large, it sounds like the legal profession is not trying to stand in the way of the train. It sounds like they're trying to lay some tracks and guide it a certain direction. Do you feel it's an accurate kind of assessment there?
Yeah, I do. I think, like you said, it's coming one way or the other. The train is leaving the station. It's already, rumbling down the track. So you're going to see a larger push at every level to use it, or else you'll be left behind. I think that's it. I mean, if I have a kind of final hot take, my thought is really overall is that I don't think AI is coming to replace lawyers. I think, but lawyers will start to use it more and more, and they already are. Again, I'm thinking about the people that I've written those letters to, and they're going to hear this podcast and like, he didn't even write that letter to me. Yeah, don't tell
He
anybody.
definitely did to you. It was the rest
Yeah,
out of
right. Yeah, everybody else I used it, but not you. But I do think lawyers that will not be replaced by it, but I do think lawyers that know how to use AI may replace lawyers that don't,
Yeah.
because it
And
is
I
a
would think
yeah. Go ahead.
I would say the only kind of like weird counterpoint, it's not really a counterpoint. It's like I wonder, and I kind of see this in some other industries, if like AI is going to bring everyone kind of to the mean and not a good way. And like smaller firms might be able to use AI to kind of get up to average if maybe if they're lesser than, they could get to average. But then I wonder if big firms, if you're not using it cleverly, if you're just kind of like resting on AI, then does that bring you down kind of to the AI average? Because clearly, what you're wanting to pay for is like creativity and experience and expertise. And if everyone's using the same tool, that might level the playing field in a way that's good for some people and bad for others.
I agree with that. I think you're right. I worry about it, again, dumbing down the top and bringing up the bottom to where we're all on the same level. But at the same time, I just read this article. I wish I could remember where I saw it, but it said that sometimes lawyers tend to have tunnel vision on a certain argument or issue, and they're going to laser in on that. And that AI might have the opportunity, the ability to let lawyers more easily step back and see the bigger picture instead of going down a rabbit hole and really investing in this one thing. Stepping back and saying, well, here's something maybe you didn't think about. And maybe that lawyer would have gotten there on their own, but there's two sides to that coin. It may kind of bring us all to the mean, but it also may let the creative lawyer be even more creative in, informing them on
Gotcha.
other avenues or options. Yeah. So.
Okay, so before we wrap it up, I know you're a car guy and a music guy too. If I could teleport back in time and see Derek Meek driving into the high school parking lot as a senior, and it's fall, the weather's good now,
Oh,
you've got the windows down. What song is blaring out of Derek's? I think was like an '88 Honda Accord. Was that
89. Man, that's really
'89
impressive.
Honda Accord? Okay,
89 Honda Accord.
that's
That
good.
was a great car. Wherever that car is right now. Oh, that was a great car.
The stories
Um,
it could tell.
oh, if it could. Probably not that many, really, honestly. But that my song was probably, right before grunge kicked in '92. I graduated high school in '92. So I'm a Dr. Feelgood, Kickstart My Heart, kind of Motley Crue hair band. I mean, I just saw Sammy Hagar in concert last weekend.
That's
It was
awesome.
great. Yeah, so I'm kind of a
It's,
hair band guy, but I got into grunge a little bit too as that happened. But
yeah,
I love some hair bands for sure.
this time
How about
period
you?
for
What's
me.
yours?
Yeah, this time period for me would probably have been Brass Monkey, Beastie Boys.
Oh,
Um,
I've raised my kids again. Brass monkey, not one for the kids, but I let them learn it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But like at the end where it's just like the bass part is like just fantastic. So
brass monkey.
on
Yeah,
that note, on
yeah.
that
What a
awesome note,
podcast!
we are so thankful, Derek, for being on the show. It's been fun having you here. And now, real quick, let's go over to the co-pilot tip of the week, which is a nice little game-changing tip that'll help you with your productivity and make your life easier.
Hi there, I'm Britton with your Copilot tip of the week. When integrating Microsoft Copilot for M365 into your organization, it's essential to follow best practices to maximize security and compliance. First, regularly review and update your security policies to reflect current needs. This ensures that your compliance measures are always relevant. Next, educate your team about how Copilot works and the importance of adhering to protocols. A well-informed team is your first line of defense against potential data breaches. Additionally, regularly monitor and audit Copilot's interactions to ensure compliance and address potential issues promptly. With Microsoft Copilot for M365, you get the best of both worlds: enhanced productivity and peace of mind, knowing your data is secure and compliant. Embrace the future of work with confidence.
Thank you, Britton, for that tip of the week. And thank you, Derek, for joining us today. It was a great conversation. And next week, we've got Reed Wellock, and we're here to talk about a crazy hot topic, which is cybersecurity insurance. Everybody's talking about it, and we're going to give you some clarity on that next week. So make sure to tune in next week, Thursday at 2 o'clock Mountain Time. Like and subscribe and share. Thanks so much for joining us today.